What you are about to hear is a story that has been building for months. A story between two people who have never sat in the same room, but who have been locked in the most public and most personal battle in the entire royal world. And this week, that battle reached a point that nobody was prepared for. Hello, friends. My name is James, and you are watching Royal Daily Report, your number one source for the most exclusive and most shocking royal stories on the internet. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now because tonight we are telling a story that will change everything you thought you knew about Tom Bower and Meghan Markle. And if you have been with us from the beginning, you already know. We never hold back. We never pull back. Let us get into it. Tom Bower is 76 years old. He has spent 50 years as an investigative journalist. He has written books about some of the most powerful people in the world: prime ministers, billionaires, media moguls, people who have armies of lawyers and publicists and crisis managers whose entire job is to make sure Tom Bower never gets close enough to write anything. And those people have failed. Every single one of them. Because Tom Bower does not stop. He does not get tired. He does not get intimidated. He does not take phone calls from lawyers and decide that perhaps this story is not worth the trouble. He finds the thread. He pulls it. And he does not let go until the whole thing unravels. He has been called the most feared biographer in Britain. And for 50 years, that reputation was enough to make most people think very carefully before becoming his subject. And then he wrote about Meghan Markle. And Meghan Markle did not behave like most people. The book was called Revenge, published in 2022. 430 pages of Tom Bower's most detailed, most sourced, most comprehensive investigation into a single subject. For years of research, hundreds of interviews. A portrait of Meghan that was so specific, so detailed, so unsparing in its conclusions that it landed in the middle of the royal conversation like a grenade. Bower concluded that Meghan was calculating, that she had constructed a public persona that bore little relationship to who she actually was in private, that the warmth and the authenticity and the humanitarian instincts she presented to the world were, in Bower's assessment, the product of careful image management rather than genuine character, that the people who had worked with her, known her, trusted her had been used and discarded in ways that a careful reading of the evidence made impossible to ignore. That was what Bower said. In 430 pages of careful, sourced, referenced prose. Meghan did not respond publicly. Her team issued a brief statement calling the book a collection of lies. And then she went quiet. And the world assumed that was the end of it. That Bower had fired his shot and Meghan had absorbed it and moved on. That is what most of Bower's subjects do. They absorb it and move on because engaging with Tom Bower publicly is a battle that history suggests you cannot win. But our source inside Meghan's circle says something very different was happening behind the scenes. Says that Meghan's public silence about revenge was not acceptance, was not moving on, was the beginning of something that Bower himself did not see coming. Because Meghan Markle, the woman Bower spent 4 years studying and 430 pages describing, had decided that Tom Bower was going to be held accountable. Not on his timeline, on hers. The first move happened 8 months after the book was published. Quiet, surgical, completely invisible to anyone outside Meghan's inner circle. Meghan's legal team began the process of compiling a detailed document. Not a lawsuit. Not yet. A document. A comprehensive, methodical, page-by-page analysis of every claim in revenge that Meghan's team considered to be factually incorrect. Every source they believed had misrepresented conversations. Every conclusion they believed the evidence did not support. Our source says this document took 6 months to compile, that it involved legal teams on both sides of the Atlantic, that it drew on private correspondence, witness statements, contemporaneous records, the kind of paper trail that exists in the background of any life lived at the level Meghan has lived hers. And that when it was complete, it ran to over 200 pages. 200 pages of what Meghan's team described internally as the actual record, the corrective. The answer to 430 pages of what they considered to be Tom Bower's version of events. Bower did not know this document existed. Nobody outside Meghan's circle knew it existed. It sat in the files of her legal team for months while Meghan decided what to do with it. While she waited. While she watched. Because Meghan, and our source is very clear about this, is not someone who acts impulsively. She is not someone who fires back immediately. She thinks. She plans. She waits for the moment when the response will have maximum effect. And she decided that the moment had not yet arrived. Then something happened that changed the calculation entirely. Tom Bower gave an interview in early 2026, a lengthy interview in which he discussed Meghan at length, in which he made claims that went beyond what he had written in Revenge. Claims about Meghan's relationship with her children, claims about her motivations for the lifestyle brand, claims about the state of her marriage to Harry, claims that our source says were not just wrong but were, in Meghan's assessment, designed to cause maximum personal damage at a moment when she was particularly vulnerable. At a moment when the Sussex brand was under pressure. At a moment when palace decisions about Archie and Lilibet had already made everything harder. Bower, our source says, chose his moment deliberately. And Meghan noticed. The phone call that followed, the call between Meghan and her lead legal advisor, lasted 2 hours. Our source was not present for the call, but spoke to someone who was briefed immediately afterwards. And they say the Meghan who came out of that 2-hour conversation was different from the Meghan who went into it. Calmer, more focused, with the particular stillness that people who know her say appears when she has made a decision she is completely at peace with. She had decided. The 200-page document was going to be used, not in the way her team had originally planned, in a bigger way. In a way that would not just challenge Bower's claims, but would challenge the entire framework through which the British press and British royal commentators had discussed her for the past 8 years. Bower received a legal communication 3 weeks ago. Our source has not seen the full document, but has been briefed on its contents. It is, by every account, the most comprehensive legal challenge Tom Bower has ever faced in 50 years of investigative journalism. It does not simply dispute specific claims. It builds a case, methodical, evidenced, cross-referenced, that Bower's entire methodology in researching and writing Revenge was fundamentally compromised. That the sources he relied on had agendas that he either failed to identify or chose to ignore. That the picture he painted was not the product of rigorous journalism, but of a predetermined conclusion in search of supporting evidence. That Tom Bower, the man who has spent 50 years holding powerful people accountable, did not hold himself to the standards he claimed to hold others to when it came to Meghan Markle. Our source says Bower's initial reaction to the legal communication was characteristically defiant. He has faced legal challenges before. He has had lawyers send him documents before. He has been in rooms with very expensive legal teams representing very powerful people before. And he has always come through it. Always. Because his journalism, whatever you think of his conclusions, is careful. He documents. He records. He keeps records of everything. He has spent 50 years making sure that when the lawyers come, he has something to show them. Our source says Bower's team reviewed Meghan's legal communication and came back to him with an assessment that was less comfortable than he expected. Because the 200-page document Meghan's team had compiled was not a simple letter from a publicist. It was detailed. It was evidenced. It raised questions about specific sources and specific conversations and specific claims that Bower's team could not immediately and cleanly answer. And that inability to immediately and cleanly answer was something Tom Bower had not experienced before. Not like this. Not from a subject. Meanwhile, Harry found out what Meghan had done. And our source says his reaction was complicated in a way that tells you everything about the specific complexity of being Harry and Meghan Sussex in 2026. On one level, Harry was proud. Fiercely proud. He has watched Meghan absorb attacks for 8 years with a patience and a dignity that he himself has acknowledged he could not have maintained. He has watched her stay quiet through things that deserved responses. Has watched her choose dignity over retaliation time and again. And watching her finally choose to fight. Watching her deploy the 200-page document. Watching her take Tom Bower on directly and seriously and with the full force of everything she had compiled. Filled Harry with something he described to a close friend as long overdue relief. Like watching someone he loved finally stop absorbing a punch and throw one back. But on another level, Harry was scared. Because Harry knows the British press. He grew up inside the machine. He knows that when a member of the royal world, even a former member, even someone who has stepped back and moved to California and built a new life, takes on a British journalist directly and publicly, the machine responds. Not just the journalist, the whole machine. Every outlet that has ever run a negative story about Meghan. Every commentator who has used Bauer's book as a reference point for their own assessments. Every editor who has a financial interest in the narrative that Bauer built. They all respond together. And Harry knew that whatever Meghan had launched was going to generate a wave of coverage that would make everything harder. For the July visit. For the relationship with Charles. For every fragile, tentative, barely there thread of reconciliation that was still alive between the Sussexes and the palace. He said this to Meghan, not as a criticism, as a concern, as the specific concern of someone who has been hurt by the machine and does not want to watch the person he loves most be hurt by it in the same way. Harry, I need to know you are prepared for what comes next. Not the legal process. What comes next in the press. Because this is going to generate a response that makes everything we have dealt with before look manageable. Meghan, I know. Harry, and you are ready for that. Meghan, Harry, I have been ready for that for 8 years. The difference is that this time I am not just absorbing it. This time there is something coming back. Harry looked at her. This woman he had chosen. This woman who had walked into the most hostile media environment in the world and had been systematically dismantled by it for 8 years, and who was now, at 44 years old, in a house in California with 2 children asleep upstairs, choosing to fight back with a 200-page document and a legal team on 2 continents. And he said the only thing there was to say, Harry, then let us make sure it lands. Meghan, it will land. I have been building it for 2 years. It will land. Tom Bauer has continued to appear in public since receiving the legal communication. He has given interviews. He has maintained his positions. He has presented the face of a man who is not concerned, who has been here before, who will be here again. But our source who has connections on both sides of this story says something different about what is happening behind that face. Says that Bauer's legal team has now spent 3 weeks with Meghan's 200-page document, and that the conversations happening inside that legal team are not comfortable ones. That specific claims, specific sources, specific conclusions are being looked at with a new and uncomfortable scrutiny. That there are moments in that document where Meghan's team has found the exact conversation, the exact record, the exact contemporaneous evidence that contradicts what Bauer wrote. And that finding those moments, encountering that level of preparation, that level of documentation, has created a situation inside Bauer's camp that his 50-year career did not fully prepare him for. Because here is the thing about Tom Bauer's 50 years of investigative journalism. Every subject he has ever written about has been powerful in conventional ways. Political power, financial power, institutional power, the power of lawyers and publicists and crisis managers, and the ability to make things difficult for journalists who come too close. But none of them had what Meghan has. None of them had 2 years of quiet, patient, completely invisible preparation. 2 years of building a document that nobody knew existed. 2 years of waiting for the right moment. 2 years of the specific patience of a woman who has been told her whole life, in one way or another, by one institution or another, that she should be quiet, that she should absorb it, that she should not fight back. 2 years of deciding that this time she was going to fight back, and fight back completely. Our source said something at the end of our conversation that has stayed with us. They said, people keep asking whether Meghan can win against Tom Bauer, whether she can take on a man with 50 years of experience and a reputation built on the fact that his subjects do not win. And I think they are asking the wrong question. The question is not whether she can win. The question is whether Tom Bauer, or anyone, was prepared for a Meghan Markle who stopped waiting for someone else to tell her story and decided to tell it herself. On her own terms, with her own evidence, in her own time. That Meghan, the Meghan who spent 2 years building a 200-page document in complete silence, is not the Meghan anyone wrote about. Not in Revenge. Not anywhere. And Tom Bauer, whatever he thought he knew about his subject, did not know that Meghan existed. He is finding out now. The legal process is ongoing. No court date has been set. Both sides are in what lawyers call the pre-litigation phase, the period where documents are exchanged and positions are established, and both sides assess whether this goes further or whether a resolution is found before it reaches a courtroom. Our source says Meghan has been clear internally about one thing. She is prepared to go all the way. She is prepared to sit in a courtroom and look at Tom Bauer across a room and let the 200 pages speak. She is prepared for everything that comes with that. The coverage, the scrutiny, the wave from the machine. She is prepared. She has been preparing for 2 years. And whatever happens next, whether this settles quietly or explodes into the most public royal legal confrontation since the phone hacking case, one thing is already true. Tom Bower wrote 430 pages about Meghan Markle, and Meghan Markle spent 2 years writing 200 pages back. And the woman in those 200 pages is nothing like the woman in his 430. And the world is about to find out which version is closer to the truth. That is all for tonight, friends. I am James, and this has been Royal Daily Report. If this story hit different for you tonight, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you have not already, and turn on those notifications because we are covering every single development in this story as it happens. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay informed, stay curious, and stay royal. Goodbye, friends.